In past videos, I have woven different Mackay tartans. And a few of these were, for example, the Dutch Mackay, which is a district tartan for the Dutch. You've got the Mackay. This is just the normal or modern Mackay. The Strathnaver Mackay. The Morgan or the Mackay Blue tartan. All of those tartans have their own cool little history and are very interesting. So if you want to go and take a look at those, I would encourage you to do that. Today I'd like to talk about plaid fabric in general. Oftentimes we will look at a plaid shirt and we will automatically think Scottish. So for example, I've got this plaid shirt right here, or plaid, depending on how you want to say it. This has checkered patterns just like the Highland cloth from northern Scotland, and yet its historical development is completely separate from that of the tartans from Scotland. So today I'd like to talk about that a little bit. But before we go on, did you know that more than just watching these YouTube videos and subscribing to the channel, you can become an actual member of the Clan Mackay? I would highly encourage you to do so that we can make the Clan Mackay the once powerful clan they used to be. Plaid and checkered fabrics have a complex global history, which is often linked to the Scottish tartans in Western thought. However, Indian Madras fabric, with its own centuries-old tradition, played an equally significant role in shaping global fashion and trade in the area of plaid or plaid fabrics. Woven in a plain cotton weave, Madras originated in Chennai, formerly known as Madras, and became a vital commodity in the transatlantic slave trade, where it was used as currency and clothing. Known as Guinea cloth, it was widely adopted by African tribes like the Kalabari, who valued its aesthetic and cultural resonance, adapting it to their own district Kalabari plaid. While some scholars argue that Scottish military tartans influenced the Madras design after the arrival of the 78th Highlander Regiment in India in 1782, historical evidence shows Madras fabric existed long before, indicating mutual influence rather than a one-way exchange. The shared use of certain weaving techniques and stylistic elements across cultures underscores this dynamic. For example, oftentimes you will find that the Scottish tartans are primarily woven in a 2x2 twill, which means that when you look at the fabric, there is that diagonal line that runs down the tartan. When you look at Madras fabric, you will notice that this is generally woven in a normal twill, which means that the checkered fabric will have a plain checkered look and you won't have those diagonal lines. But in the mid-1800s, you started to see Madras fabric adopt this diagonal line of a 2x2 twill with the influence of the Highlanders. And you also have noticed in this time, Scottish fabric and tartans from the north of Scotland having a plain twill, which you do not see the diagonal line. And I've seen some tartans with that too. Although that's not saying that every single Scottish tartan has to be diagonal. What I'm saying is that generally speaking, you would find a diagonal line in the Scottish tartans, and generally speaking, you would not find diagonal lines in the Madras fabric. And to see in the mid-1800s that shift to show that they did start to adopt both ways suggests in my mind that there could have been, and most likely was, a cultural convergence between the two countries. In America, Madras fabric became associated with enslaved people, both as cheap clothing and as a cultural link to African heritage. Over time, Madras evolved from a colonial trade fabric into a global fashion symbol. Britain, during the Industrial Revolution, began mass-producing Madras-style textiles, contributing to India's decline in textile dominance. Today, authentic or imitated, Madras remains a meaningful expression of identity, craftsmanship, and global cultural exchange, as well as the Highland tartans of Scotland. In conclusion, you had the tartans of Scotland that were developed anciently and eventually used and adopted to what they are today. And you had the Madras checkered fabric in India that was also developed in with no connection to the Scottish tartan, and that developed its cultural identity. Often today, you will see the two fabrics meshed almost as if they are identical things, even though they are quite culturally distinct.